Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, your source for cutting-edge dairy industry insights and analysis. I'm Bella. In our 196th episode, we're tackling what might be the most significant economic shift for American dairy farms in a generation.
And I'm Douglas. Thanks for joining us, folks. We've got an urgent topic today, the federal milk marketing order reforms coming June 1st, just 81 days from now. These changes will fundamentally reshape how your milk is valued and who profits from it. Some regions will win big, others could face devastating losses.
That's right, Douglas. Today we're breaking down exactly how these reforms will impact your operation, region by region, with specific strategies you need to implement before this June deadline hits. Let's dive in. So Douglas, let's start with the basics. When we talk about federal milk marketing order reforms, or FMMO reforms, we're essentially talking about the rules that determine how milk is priced across America, correct?
Exactly right, Bella. The federal milk marketing orders are essentially the rule book that determines who gets what slice of the dairy revenue pie. And that pie is about to be cut very differently starting June 1st, 2025.
And we have some critical dates our listeners should be aware of, right?
Absolutely. The USDA published the final rule on January 17th of this year, after the producer referendum passed with the required 2/3 majority on December 31st, 2024. The main changes kick in June 1st. That's 81 days from today. But one critical component, the milk composition factor updates, won't take effect until December 1st, 2025. That 6-month delay has significant financial implications we'll discuss later.
This is all happening very quickly. Why are these reforms so significant compared to previous FMMO changes?
2 reasons, Bella. First, this is the most substantial milk pricing overhaul in 25 years. Second, and more importantly, while some aspects benefit farmers, like returning to the higher of Class 1 pricing formula, processors have secured make allowance increases that could cost a typical 100-cow dairy approximately $56,000 annually. That's potentially devastating for many operations.
Let's talk about that higher of formula first. I know many producers consider this a victory, but what exactly does it mean for dairy farmers?
The higher of formula determines how Class 1 milk, that's fluid milk sold as a beverage, is priced. Back in the 2018 Farm Bill, they changed from using the higher of Class 3 or Class 4 prices to an average plus 74 cents formula. That experimental change backfired spectacularly during the pandemic.
How badly did it backfire?
Catastrophically. During market upheavals like we saw in 2020, that flawed formula transferred an estimated $725 million from farmers' pockets to processors' profit margins. That's money that should have gone to producers but didn't because of this formula change.
So the return to the higher of formula isn't really giving farmers something new. It's restoring what was taken away in 2018.
Exactly. It's like if someone took $725 from your wallet, then handed you back $700 and expected you to thank them for their generosity. The return to the higher of formula isn't some grand gift to dairy farmers. It's merely returning what was taken through that disastrous 2018 change.
Did the USDA acknowledge this problem?
Yes. Dana Cole, Deputy Administrator of the AMS Dairy Program, actually admitted that the 2018 Farm Bill formula resulted in steep reductions in producer income as a result of market disruptions during the COVID-19 pandemic. The new order, according to Cole, gives you certainty as to what lies ahead. You know what's coming.
Now let's talk about these make allowance increases that will impact producers negatively. What exactly are make allowances and why are they changing?
Make allowances are essentially the margin built into pricing formulas to cover manufacturing costs. They're based on estimates of what it costs processors to make a pound of butter, cheese, whey, or dry milk powder. The bigger the make allowance, the lower the price the formula gives to producers.
And how significant are these increases?
They're substantial. Since 2008, cheese make allowances are increasing 25.8%, from 20.03 cents per pound to 25.19 cents. Butter allowances increased 32.5%, from 17.15 cents to 22.72 cents. Non-fat dry milk sees the biggest jump, 42.6%, going from 16.78 cents to 23.93 cents. And dry whey increases 34%, from 19.91 cents to 26.68 cents per pound.
CERNed. Those are huge increases. What's the processor industry saying about this?
Michael Dykes, president and CEO of the International Dairy Foods Association, called these important updates to elements of the FMMO system, including much-needed changes to make allowances. He also noted that, while the USDA process did not address all issues within the supply chain, particularly for Class 1 and organic milk processors, IDFA is optimistic that this process has laid the groundwork for a unified and forward-looking dairy industry.
But farm organizations don't see it that way, do they?
Serious, not at all. Zippy Duvall, president of the American Farm Bureau Federation, strongly criticized the process, stating that USDA instead bases make allowances on an unscientific voluntary survey that allows processors to opt out, skewing the results in a direction that results in lower milk prices for farmers. Farm Bureau analysis suggests that changing the make allowance without a mandatory audited survey could lead to unjust penalties for dairy farmers, which directly defies the intended purpose of the FMMO system.
What would these make allowance increases have meant if they had been implemented earlier?
According to USDA analysis, if these changes had been implemented between 2019 and 2023, they would have reduced Class 3 prices by 90 cents per hundredweight and Class 4 prices by 85 cents per hundredweight. Those reductions directly impact producer payments, particularly in regions with high manufacturing utilization.
To the strength. This brings us to what might be the most important aspect for our listeners: how these changes will impact different regions. It sounds like there will be clear winners and losers based on geography.
That's absolutely right, Bella. The nationwide referendum that approved these changes masked profound regional disparities in how these reforms will impact farm-level profitability. Let's break it down region by region.
Let's start with the Northeast. I understand they might actually benefit from these changes.
Correct. Northeast dairy producers face what industry analysts describe as a period of potential competitive advantage after years of challenging margins. The key factor is their higher Class 1 utilization, meaning more of their milk goes into fluid products. This makes them less vulnerable to the make allowance increases, which primarily affect manufacturing classes. According to Farm Bureau analysis, Northeast producers stand to benefit significantly from the reforms.
There's also new processing capacity coming online in that region, right?
Yes, and that timing couldn't be better. New processing investments in New York and Pennsylvania create a unique window of opportunity. Before Northeast producers break ground on expansion plans, though, they should ensure they're extracting maximum value from their existing herds through optimized nutrition, genetics, and management practices focused on component production efficiency.
What about upper Midwest producers? I imagine Wisconsin and Minnesota operations are viewing these changes differently.
The outlook is much more concerning there. Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative directly acknowledges that the reforms would slightly decrease the minimum regulated price private milk buyers have to pay to pooled milk producers in the upper Midwest order. This regional disadvantage stems from several technical aspects of the reform package, particularly how components are valued.
What specific challenges do upper Midwest producers face?
The decision to update skim milk composition factors without corresponding increases in butterfat factors creates particular complications for upper Midwest producers who typically emphasize butterfat production. According to industry analysis, these adjustments could significantly impact the upper Midwest pool value. It threatens the region's competitive position and demands immediate adaptive strategies.
And what's happening with Western operations? California, the Southwest, and Pacific Northwest.
They face the most significant challenges. According to Farm Bureau analysis, California would experience a $94 million reduction in pool value, while the Southwest would see a $72 million decrease. These regional disadvantages stem from the higher proportion of milk utilized in Class 3 and 4 manufacturing in these areas. With make allowance increases directly reducing the value of milk used in these classes, Western producers face the most dramatic negative impacts.
That's a staggering regional disparity. What about Central and Mideast regions?
They're actually positioned to see modest price improvements. According to industry analysis, the reforms would slightly increase the price to producers in the Central and Mideast orders. This advantage stems from their geographic proximity to major population centers and fluid milk markets, giving them a competitive advantage under the reformed pricing structure.
Let's shift gears to what producers can do right now. With implementation just 81 days away, what strategies should forward-thinking dairy farmers be implementing?
The strategies vary dramatically by region, Bella. Northeast producers should focus on maximizing component production while potentially exploring strategic expansion due to their favorable positioning. They should be thinking about how to capitalize on what industry analysts call a period of potential competitive advantage.
What about Upper Midwest producers facing decreased regulated minimum prices?
They need to pursue enhanced overorder premium negotiations immediately. With concerns about potential pool value losses, these producers must identify alternate revenue streams. According to Mark Stevenson, a noted dairy policy expert, to the extent that co-ops are not losing money at these higher make allowances, that wouldn't be coming off as a deduction, potentially. And to the extent that you have more proprietary firms covering their make allowances, they may be able to put some of those overorder premiums back into place.
And producers in California and other Western states?
They face the most significant challenges and need to evaluate whether their current scale and efficiency can overcome these regulatory disadvantages. Some may need to consider more dramatic business model adjustments. Cost containment will be absolutely critical, as will exploring alternative marketing arrangements.
You mentioned component production earlier. There are some significant changes to milk composition factors coming in December, right?
Yes, but not until December 1st, 2025, 6 months after the main implementation date. True protein will be updated from 3.1% to 3.3%, other solids from 5.9% to 6.0%, and non-fat solids from 9.0% to 9.3%.
What's the impact of these changes?
These adjustments will slightly increase revenue from beverage, Class 1, milk sales to pooled producers, creating incentives to optimize component production. The 6-month delay in implementation means producers won't see this benefit until December. Industry analysis suggests this delay could cost dairy farmers more than $100 million during the first 6 months alone.
But there's no change to butterfat standards.
That's one of the most problematic aspects. USDA decided against updating butterfat solids factors despite growth in milk butterfat content in recent years. This imbalanced approach creates new strategic considerations for feeding and breeding programs, particularly for operations that have historically emphasized butterfat production.
Let's talk about risk management. How will these changes impact producers' hedging programs?
The structural changes to pricing formulas necessitate an immediate review of risk management strategies. Industry experts have specifically cautioned about complications for dairy producers' hedging programs. Producers utilizing Class 3 milk futures or equivalent USDA insurance products may face increased exposure to butterfat price risk under the new system.
What should producers be doing right now to prepare?
Progressive operations are already consulting with risk management specialists to recalibrate their hedging programs, particularly regarding the alignment between component production, forward contracting practices, and futures positions. The transition period between now and full implementation presents a critical window for adjusting these strategies.
Does the removal of barrel cheese from pricing calculations affect hedging strategies?
Absolutely. Removing 500-pound barrel cheddar cheese from pricing calculations means Class 3 pricing will be based solely on 40-pound block prices. According to industry analysis, industry advocates of this removal believe relying solely on 40-pound block cheddar cheese to set the monthly announced cheese price will reduce the volatility of cheese prices. However, this change requires careful reconsideration of existing risk management approaches.
We've covered a lot of ground today, Douglas. As we wrap up, what are the key takeaways dairy producers should remember about these FMMO reforms?
4 critical points, Bella. First, processor advantage. Make allowances are surging 25 to 42%, potentially costing farmers $56,000 annually per 100 cows. Second, regional impacts vary dramatically. Northeast operations gain from high Class 1 utilization, while Midwest and California operations face potential losses exceeding $94 million. Third, the restored higher of formula recovers what was essentially stolen from farmers by that flawed 2018 policy change. And fourth, the implementation countdown. Just 81 days remain to renegotiate premiums, adjust hedging strategies, and optimize component production.
It sounds like the coming months will be critical for dairy operations across America. What's your final advice to our listeners?
Your competitors aren't waiting for perfect reforms. They're adapting to what's coming. The question is whether your operation is similarly prepared for dairy's new economic landscape. While these changes will create market stability, that stability will benefit some regions far more than others. Make your adaptation strategy a top priority today, not 80 days from now when it's too late.
Thank you, Douglas, for that expert analysis, and thank you to our listeners for joining us for this critical discussion. For more dairy industry insights and analysis, visit www.thebullvine.com. Until next time, I'm Bella.
And I'm Douglas. Thanks for listening to the Bullvine Podcast.